Finishing up the notes with Chapter 6 and kicking off this section with the recorded voice. The most important goal of recording voice in a studio production setting is to get a clean recording that accentuates the announcer's voice and delivery. In other words, we want to try to get as crisp and clean and clear of a recording of the voice as we possibly can so that we can minimize the amount of effects and treatments that we have to use in order to make a recording usable. If we get something crisp and clean and clear, we might not have to use effects at all, unless, of course, we're trying to alter the voice in one way or another. But we want to avoid having to use effects in such a way that it cleans something up when we can get a clean recording in the first place. Achieving this goal may involve considerations like selecting a mic that de-emphasizes peculiarities of a performer's speech, things like pee-popping or excessive sibilants, like the hissing S sounds and things like that. So if you have the ability to choose a particular microphone for a particular performer, you may want to consider that. Also, replacing a highly sensitive mic with a less sensitive model to cut down on room noise or ambiance. Those things can also detract from a recording. If there's too much that's going on that overpowers or just completely distorts the recording and the effect that you're trying to do. Eliminating table noises. This can especially be a problem if you have people in the studio that are not used to doing voice recordings. If they start tapping on the table, clicking pens, maybe they're using gestures and they accidentally knock the microphone or something like that. And you can mitigate some of that by hanging the microphone from a boom rather than attaching it to a table stand. That's very helpful. That's why you see that in radio studios quite often. And instructing speakers, professional and non-professional alike, on positioning and on use of the mic. Just because someone's a pro doesn't necessarily mean they know every technique for every microphone in every studio. So giving guidance to everybody is going to be helpful because you as the producer are the authority on that particular studio and you know some of its various idiosyncrasies and things to watch out for. When miking multiple speakers, it's practical to use 2 microphones when there are 2 people speaking. Makes sense. That way you can control the volume and other features of the recording for each particular talent. An overabundance of mics, though, can cause difficulties in engineering the show. You're trying to find the right fader for somebody. If you're dealing with 6 or 7 people, you're having to make sure that you have the right mic, the right talent, and adjusting and that sort of thing. That can be a bit of a challenge depending on the type of production that you're doing. Another thing to keep in mind is that every time you open up another microphone, you're going to increase the overall room tone. You're going to increase the opportunity for room noise to be able to impact your recording. The solution to phasing problems is to avoid as much as possible any overlap among the microphone pickup patterns. And this has a couple of ways that we can do some mitigation here. First off, you might put more than one speaker on a microphone. So say you have 3 microphones, but you have 6 people speaking. You can very well pair people up and put 2 people on a mic. A speaker who has an overpowering voice generally does not belong on the same mic with someone who speaks softly or whispers. That makes a lot of sense for obvious reasons, because when you're doing mic checks and you're looking at the VU meter readings, if you've got a soft speaker paired up with a more projective speaker, that means that the producer is going to have to watch those VU levels and adjust that every time a different speaker is talking into the microphone. You want to avoid that if you can. When getting mic levels from talent, it's best to get them to read their copy in the way they intend on recording it. Or in the case of an interview, what I like to do is engage in normal conversation to get their natural speaking level. Avoid letting someone get on a mic and just go check 1, 2, 3. Because most of us, the way we say things like check 1, 2, 3 is going to be different from the way that our normal speaking voice is. And we want to make sure that we are optimizing the microphone and the levels that we're setting for that person in the way they intend on speaking in the project that we're working on. So if it's commercial copy, get them to read some of the copy and get them to read it in a way that they intend on reading it for the actual performance in production itself. If it's an interview sort of thing, engaging them in conversation is more likely going to get them to speak in their natural speaking voice. But those tactics will help you to get true mic level setups in such a way that you're not going to be surprised when the actual production starts and gets underway. Communicating with speakers or talent, we'll use those terms interchangeably. There's some typical hand signals that the textbook suggests. Now, you can see the pictures of these in your textbook. You're on consists of a finger pointed directly at the speaker, basically pointing at someone as if to say, go, you're live, do your thing. Give me a level. A chattering motion with the fingers indicates that you would like the announcer to give you a voice level. Kill my microphone. This is where you draw a finger across your throat, like you're slashing, like, kind of morbid here, but you get what I'm saying. This says basically kill the mic. Now, some other typical hand signals. Wrap up. This signal is accomplished by a circular motion of the hands, like you're winding something up. We're going to wind things up. We're going to wrap things up. And then stretch. You make a motion with your hands as though stretching a rubber band. This tells the person on the microphone to keep talking and to stretch out the program. This is an effective one if you're doing a program that is a fixed length of time and you need to cover with content. Now, these are suggested signs. They're not universally accepted signs. They're not foolproof signs. Some producers choose to have cue cards instead written out with messages. And this is especially helpful if you're dealing with people that aren't used to the recording studio setting, so they can very clearly see what it is that you want them to do by reading what's on the cue card. Sound effects. Sound effects are also available as production libraries on CDs or via the internet, just like music production beds. You need to make sure that you have permission to use the sounds before incorporating them into your productions. Same sort of thing. More than likely, you're going to have to purchase a sound effects library, and that's allowed for use in production purposes. Sometimes you won't be able to find what you need, and a sound effect will have to be created. When producing a sound effect, be prepared to try some different mic techniques, and don't hesitate to try various sound levels and to fade different effects in and out to create the sound you want. This is where you get to play. This is where you have a little trial and error. And some of the things that may represent a certain type of sound, you may be able to create using all sorts of different types of props and materials and actions and that sort of thing. Combining elements in production. Recording programs have the capability to mix many tracks together, allowing for the producer to control each sound effect on a separate track. This allows you to put those different effects on, or to increase or decrease volume of a particular sound, and you can use those things to your benefit in order to make other sounds more or less prominent, or to create some sort of audio perspective for the listener. A major consideration in combining these elements in a production studio setting is to ensure that the final product comes as close to the original sound as possible, and to do it with the smallest possible number of recordings of the same segment. So what we're talking about here is that we want to try to put things together in such a way that we're not continually having to do retakes of things. Now, we're not talking about when you make a mistake and, just keeping the mistakes and that sort of thing. But you want to try, for example, say you have a car screeching within your production 4 different times over the course of that production. You don't want to have to recreate that car screeching 4 different times. You have that recording once, and then you can incorporate that at various points in your full production. Although some deviation in quality might be acceptable in live coverage of a news event, something produced in studio must sound very good with no lapses in mic technique or production values. This is particularly true of commercial material, where the file may be played throughout the broadcast day, and not to mention the fact that the client is paying for this product that is being put out over the air. So we want the commercial client to be happy because the commercial client wants to be shown in the best possible light. So it is very important that we pay attention to the production values and the quality of sound that we are using within pre-recorded productions. That's going to do it for Chapter 6. You know the drill at this point. Get those notes filled out and turned in. Do your study questions. Look at the survey on Blackboard. Be prepared to come to class to talk about things. Bring your questions to class. And we can talk about what you might like better. Maybe you like the live environment better. Maybe you like pre-recorded production better. Maybe there's certain things that you're unsure about when it comes to what you can and can't do. We'll talk about all those things when we get together in class.